JavaScript object. Okay, when you talk about the JavaScript object, we are not going to through the objects, not classes. We know very well that the object is not a class. Okay, and this JavaScript is not fully fledged object oriented programming language. Remember one thing, that's why it is the headline. I have specified objects but not classes. Then similarly, this JavaScript is not a full-fledged object. It's object-oriented programming language but not fully fledged object-oriented, because it doesn't having any classes. Okay, it does not have class per se, and it does not support many of the patterns. Okay, you had expect from object-oriented language like inheritance and polymorphism. You know very well you have inheritance and polymorphism features in object-oriented programming language, but here in JavaScript it doesn't have. That's why it is not called as fully fledged object-oriented programming language. What this language does? Yes, this language support object. Okay, when it support object, then what we can do with this in this programming language? When we say that it is not the fully fledged object oriented, that means in JavaScript you can use the object oriented concept but not much. What are the concepts you can use? The concept you can use that are like constructor, you can use properties, and you can use methods which are associated with them. And there are the objects that are included in JavaScript language. You can also define your own kind of object. That means you know very well the object we create, right? The same way here also you can create your own object, whatever you required as per your implementation part, and you can implement this constructor, properties, method associated with this. You know very well what is the constructor and how to create the constructor. Normally, when if you define that in the constructor, we generally say that the class name, okay, and the method name both are same. Okay, these are the called as constructor. But here we don't have class, but still whatever the object you are going to use, okay, that is you are going to create a constructor. Normally when you create an object, what we do that? So using especially in object oriented concept, when we are creating the object, that means you have to use a keyword called new, right? We have to use a keyword called new, and using this new keyword you can create the object, right? How you can use? Same, you can see the syntax below. Remember again, because we are going to create the object like it's a variable, right? So whenever you want that, then you have to define first where. If you remember in object-oriented programming like C++, Java, we used to declare as a int and a is equal to something, right? The same way here you have to define as a var, that is the variable. Some object name you can define is equal to new keyword, which will define your, that is you are going to create the object, and give the any object name whichever you want. And what are the parameter you want to pass? You know very well how to pass the parameter with the comma operator, p1 p2 to pn, that is the parameter 1, parameter 2 to n parameter you can define. For some classes the shortcut constructor are defined. How you can define the shortcut constructor? And what is the example? You can see here I am creating a var greeting. Okay, I am creating a greetings message of the good morning, right? And you can see this is the using the some classes directly I've created the greeting. And formal, when you want to create the using the constructor, the below you can see the example where I'm giving the any object name is equal to new, I'm giving a string and you are giving the good morning, right? So this is the your classes, the constructor defined with the help of classes, and with the formal how we do that. This is the way you can use the constructor. Then what about the properties? How you can access those properties? The same way we have studied in object oriented programming language, the same way it is here also. Like you are going to use the constructor, like using the dot operator you can access, right? Hope you remember. That each object, whatever you have defined in with the properties, right? Each object might have the properties, right? You are defining some properties for every object that can be accessed depending on its definition. That means how you are defining, it is going to access accordingly. When a property exists, it can be accessed using dot notation. Okay, and when you use the dot, that means you are going to pass the reference to the particular property, right? The same way how we have used in your C++ or Java. How it will be there? You can see the example. I am giving alert. Okay, the object name whatever you have given, dot property, what I am property defining. So here dot is used. That means this dot operator will access the properties of the particular object, right? So you can easily access your properties, okay, in JavaScript. Then what about the methods? The same, if you have method, even method can be accessed using the dot operator, but you have to access the method name whatever you have defined. That means when you define the object, when you have the object in your programming, so object can have also method. You can define a method also, which are the function associated with instance of object, right? So whatever the function or method are associated with a particular instance of object, these methods can be called using the dot notation as per the properties defined for the particular function, right? And but instead of accessing a variable, we are going to call the particular method. If you see previous, we were calling the particular property one, but when you see here, we are directly calling the method itself. That means the method can be accessed, and this method will produce different output depending on the object whatever associated with this, and you can define accordingly, right? This is the method. Now what are the objects included in JavaScript? There are a number of useful objects are included in the JavaScript. Those are like arrays, boolean, date, math, string, DOM object. DOM is, we'll see that we have a topic on the DOM. Okay, and these are the objects that can be included in the JavaScript. We'll talk about the first about the array. Okay, what is the array? You know very well, array are one of the most used data structure in any of the programming language, right? Whenever you want to store in like some more values are there, some like systematic order, some variables are there, some names are there, then you are going to use this array concept, right? You have several student list and you want to use into the store their value, then you are going to use array, right? In this class, that means array, right, is defined to behave more like a linked list, right? That means how you have studied about the linked list, right? The same way it can be used, behave like the same, but that is that it can be resized dynamically. You can resize it dynamically. Okay, that means the way you want, you can resize accordingly. And the implementation is browser specific. That means it's not like the implementation you will do a store in the like compilation and everything. No, it's not required the compilation and other things. It's as simple, just create it, okay, and it is going to execute in your JavaScript. That means in browser. That means whatever efficiency of insert and delete operation is unknown. Because why we have said that it is unknown? Because when you compile in the program, then you have the features, okay, select anyone which one you want to delete, right? That means you are writing the code into the compiler window, right? That means your debugger window, right, to modify that. But here you don't have, because it is the browser specific. If you want to delete, yes, it is possible, but you have to write the operation with like with the database, then only it is going to be the implementation will be there. And syntax is very simple. You can like write var and any variable name greetings is equal to new and array. That means the moment you define the new array, it will define. This way also you can do that, and simply you can define the array. If you want the initialization of array, that also you can do similar way. That means you are going to give the same variable and variable name greetings is equal to new array and what you want to initialization. I am initializing like good morning, good morning. So in this array we have two greetings. That means two variable we are passing. We have two data, that is good morning and again good morning. Even though if you want to define in different way, that is also possible here in the JavaScript. Like just you define var greetings and just you define in the square bracket, it will denote as this is a value, that is array value. And this way you can use this array initialization, okay, or you can declare the array in your JavaScript. Then how you can access the JavaScript? That means in array, the same how you were used to do that. Like obviously when you know that the array always is stored from 0, right? The index is 0. The same way when you want to access the first value, then you are going to use alert and greeting. We are going to use alert, greeting, and which variable, that means which indexed value you want to access, you can use that one. Okay. If you are going to use in for loop, that means in the for loop, the same way you are going to access. Okay. In for loop, that same way you will be using like for and then variable initialization. Then you are going to give the condition and then increment and decrement, and you use alert greetings of 5. So whatever the variables are there, that all will be printed here. Even there is a different way also that you can access. How you can modify? If you want to modify, then you have to add an item to existing array. Then how you can do that? The same variable name, that is the greeting, that is greetings dot. You know that when you want to modify an array, you have to use push and pop operation. That means you can add here push and then you can write good evening. Then it will add it in the good evening. And additionally, there are so many other methods that you can use, like concat for concatenation, joining to a string or to anything whichever you want to join. Then slice, then join, reverse, shift, and sort. These are the methods you can use directly. Let's see one example. This is our previous example. What I'll do, I'll save as this file. Same way I will save as in the form of HTML. I'll write array.js, or just I'll write arjs.html. Save it. Okay. Then what you need here, the same way you required the as it is, the HTML head, title and body tag, and you can write anything like this is the example of JavaScript array. Remaining methods you can try and give you one example. Okay, then what I need here, I don't need this as of now, I'll delete it. Okay, then what you are going to do here, I'm just going to create some name I want to store in the array and print into the browser. Then how you can write, as I mentioned, you can write variable. First you have to create the array, then I will create the variable as a names, okay, is equal to, then as I mentioned you have to give a square bracket, and then I will give web, okay, comma, then even if you want to give the space also you can give the space, that is not a problem. Web C, comma, then C++ space Java. I'll give your JavaScript. Okay, and at the end you have to give the semicolon. This is the array we have created, because I said you that there is two methods that you have to use. Either you can create, the best way is this one, because you should not always remember, okay, variable name again is equal to, then create the different way, then you have to remember always. So better, always best practice, create the array like this way, and it will be useful for you also. The next, what we want, we have to, like, now we have created this, now we want to print this arrays into the browser, that is on the document. Then in previous presentation we have discussed about the how you can print by document dot, right, the same method you are going to use here, document dot, but here we are going to get by ID, because here this ID is this one, right? Previously we have just given document and then we have used the get element, that's all. But here we have to get by ID, then I have to use get, okay, and then it is case sensitive, okay, then you have to use get element by ID, okay, then demo, sorry, that means what is the ID now? The ID is, what is the name? That is names. My ID is names, or you can define any ID over here. Which ID you are going to define? Maybe you will think, no, I will give, this is my ID. No, this is not your ID, because the ID means where you are going to print. We have not defined anywhere the ID which we are going to print, okay. That means you have to define a ID, that is a paragraph where you are going to print. Then I will create one paragraph over here, right, and then you are going to access with the ID. ID is equal to what ID you want to give. You can give anything like sub. I'll give sub as a my ID, so it will be identify that it is a subject, okay, I'm going to print here. Then just close here, I'm not going to print anything, just this will be print this entire element. Now what is the ID we have defined? We have defined ID as a subject, then you have to pass the subject here, okay, and then where you are going to print? You are going to print on the browser scheme. That means you are going to use here dot, where on the HTML file, right? That means you have to give inner HTML, that is inner HTML file, okay, and is equal to, what is your variable? That means we are going to access our variable as a names and semicolon. Just finally close the script. This is the way you have to use your JavaScript. That means you can create the array, and the remaining further practice you do that. Several practices are there. Refer the textbooks for more examples and just do the implementation. Now we'll run and see the output. / my file is name is arjs.html. Let's see we get output or not. Okay, see there we are getting the example, right? The output we are getting web comma c plus c comma c plus plus comma JavaScript. Like this way you can write. This is your example of array in the JavaScript. Same way, remaining method you can just implement and practice it. If not getting, just let me know. I'll help you with that. Next, we have about the math class. Okay, what is this math class? This math class that will allow you to access some of the common mathematical function. That means suppose you want some mathematical function in your programming, right? Then how you can do that? Then you have the predefined function like math.py. The moment you give .py, that means the value is 3.1.4. That value it will take. Math.sqrt. Hope you remember the sqrt is a function directly. If you give a square root of any value, you can get directly. If you give math.random, then randomly number between 0 and 1 it will be generated. The same way, this is the static class and it will contain the method like max, min, POW, that means power, square, exponential, and trigonometric function like sinus, cos, and arctan, right? And many mathematical that is the constant are also defined, like such as pi, that means pi value, e for exponential, square 2, and some others. Many are there. So once you start doing the practices, you will get to know that it's all depend on your practice and how you are going to implement this. When you do this, you will get to know that okay, what are the functions you required in your web development. Next, you have the string class. You know very well a string class. It's already has been used without us even knowing it, right? How we have used in constructor, right? This one. As I mentioned, you can either declare like this variable greet, that means greetings, is equal to new string. That means you are defining a string variable. This is the long form for the constructor which just now we saw that. Better you use like var greet is equal to go. That means it is the shortcut for the creating constructor, and also it is denote that is the string, right? Same way, if you want to calculate the length, you know very well in a string function what are the methods are there, like you can calculate the length of the string, right? Then if you want to calculate the length of a string, then you just give alert. Okay, that means you are going to give the pop-up method and greet dot, that means your whatever the constructor name, that means method name dot and length. The moment you define this, you will get the result as a display. It will be 4 and you will get the result. And there are a lot of various methods are there you can define. Like you can see here example, I have used here another variable called str, right? And what I am doing, I am going to concate the method, right? So previously what we had just good. Now I am going to add this with the morning, right? Good morning I want to add. So what I have to do, create a variable. Now what is the constructor you have? Greet dot concat, you know that, right? So concat morning, it will use the concatenation operation, but again this is the like long form of the concatenation. The best practice, use directly like this. Create a variable var str, and what is your previous your greeting method constructor, that is the greet, right? And give the plus symbol directly and write the directly the string, that is the morning. Automatically it will take the answer as a good and plus morning, that is the good morning result. That's all. And when you are going to give in print, then alert you are going to use for str. That's all. Simple. And many other useful methods are also exist. Whichever you want, you can use. Like you have if you want to access only one character, right? Character add, that means single character. Then you want to search any value using this index of, then you can use index of. Then you want to use a string allow, then you can even split the string for like a split, search and match method. So many other things are also there. It's not only this much is there. There are a lot of other methods are also there, and please do the implementation. The same way you have date method. I want to know the date, as we have seen in previous class example also. Like the date class is yet another helpful included in the object, right? We have seen in previous like whenever you open any website, you will see that the date and time will be showing, right? How it will happen? They use the same date method, and this will be allow you to quickly calculate the current date. That means it will create a date object on for the particular dates, and it will display this today date, and you can convert into whatever you want, like right to the string. And what you have to do? Simple. You create a variable, that means constructor. You can see here I am creating d is equal to new date. Now you have to give as a alert, right? So alert, okay, the alert is like you can give alert today is plus do dot d dot to a string. That means it will convert into the string. That means the output will be this is the value. That means this is result. It will be printed on your screen. The output as a pop-up you will get it, because I am using here alert. Then what is the window? The window object in JavaScript will correspond to the browser itself. Through it, you can access the current page URL, the browser history, and what's being displayed in the status bar. Okay, that means you can use this into the browser window, right? In fact, the alert function, like whatever we are using alert, it mentioned earlier, actually it is the method for window object. What is the meaning of window? That means the moment you give the alert, a pop-up is getting open. That means a window is getting appeared, right? When you open any website and any pop-up get opened, what it mean that? That means a window is getting appeared. That means the window method, right? The same way here also. That means if you use a window, you can access whatever you want. Like you can access the page URL, browser history, and whatever is being displayed in the status bar, that can be opened with the help of new browser windows. That is your Windows object into the JavaScript.